So yeah, I mean, to me, the idea of if we could get to a point, instead of all the discussion of training or any of that stuff, if we could just get to the idea of why don't you treat us like you treat middle class white people, or like you treat, like, in other words, what they exactly did in Staten Island when that guy decided that, because remember, it was neighbors that called firstly on him, and then so the first time he endangered things, then the second time he decides, I'm an autonomous zone, I'm going to drive, and I that you police have no say, and he decides he's going to leave the scene, oh, running into a cop. Now, at no point did this person get tased, beaten, dragged out of the car, or nothing. He was removed from the car, put in the cruiser, and thusly. And so to me, like, if we could just have more of that, then we'd have there'd be no need to have protests or any of this other stuff, and we could stop the centuries old issues of how policing affects brown people different than white people.
I think that you are right, Dow, in that our communities are policed differently. And there's a litany of reasons. That's a whole nother show, in my humble opinion, of why that happens. Uh, just a whole litany of reasons. I think that what you said about how come we are not this thing that happened in Staten Island didn't happen in Florida, and we should be policed like other communities do. I think that in fact, numerically, it happens most of the time. Most of the time, we don't see a shooting. We don't see any kind of taking of life. And I think that it's important to look at the scope, the sheer scope of how many police interactions there are with black and brown people just in New York City. When at the beginning of the year, January 1st, every borough has their own count of arrest numbers. Most of the time, each borough by the end of the year is up to 100,000 arrest numbers. Now some of them are minor things like that, but others are confrontational, to say the least.
Right.
If we have, and make no mistake about it, I'm not saying that trivializing any one of these incidents, but I'm saying just numerically, just looking at the numbers, if we have 10, that's 10 too many. Maybe if we have 20, maybe we say 100, and I think 100 is many more than we actually have, in the course of a year. But we have 500,000 interactions with people, and you have 100 incidents. Statistically, to tell you the truth, what you're showing is the exception, not the rule. I think the numbers would bear me out on that. It's the exception, not the. It's not a. The
100%.
exception doesn't make it acceptable. You know what I mean? Make no mistake about that. But it is not is the rule. And so when you mentioned before, you mentioned training, and you look at this particular incident, I think that how this incident may bear out, based on the testimony or the interview with the attorney, is that the female officer in no point in the video seemed to be threatened for any serious physical injury. She retreated, and she took a tactical position behind the car. So, so even when the cars started coming forward, it wasn't in her direction. Interestingly enough, she probably would have had justification to shoot because the car was coming toward her partner, who shot. I think his problem is the fact that, and I'm talking about legally, I'm not talking about morally, ethically, either. I'm talking about legally. His problem comes when he continues to shoot after he was not in peril. And I think that that's where the rubber is going to meet the road in this particular case.
Well, certainly to me, the problem with that is the idea that, and I could give a damn about what's legal because it's the same system that set up that illegal, that horrible system. That's the educational system is the same one that set up the police and the same
Change
one
it.
that set up the
Change it, brother.
corporations.
Change it.
So hey, we do it. I do what I can, but like the system is a system for a reason, and so there's a reason why it walks over this country, walks over other countries. So I'm just saying. So, but to the point of the idea of the rarity, I always point out the idea that we shouldn't be talking so much about the shootings because everything that ever happened to me with police, I was never beat up. I was like, I wasn't dragged down. Nobody shot at me. It was just threats of cop hand on his gun and so on and so forth. And I'm standing on the outside of my car and they're rifling through my car. And then for me, the torment was the statement, you can go, but we're looking at you kind of thing,